We're joined on the phone today by concert promoter Danny Zelisko, and we're talking about his new book, All Excess Occupation Concert Promoter. Hey, Danny, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time out with me.
My pleasure.
Well, first, you got the new book out, All Access Occupation Concert Promoter. Can you tell the listeners a bit about the new book?
Well, it's culled from over 5 decades of doing concerts, mainly in Arizona. There's stories covering my exploits with Led Zeppelin very early on in my young life, and lots of Beatles stuff and Iron Maiden and Scorpions, you name it. Over the years, I managed to promote pretty much everybody that is out there performing live, and have had a great time doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing you were able to recall so much detail, with all these stories, considering how many concerts you've been involved with over the years.
And how many brain cells get burned out along the way. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to keep track of, believe me. But I'll tell you what, when you have these kind of bands around that you're working with, and always something special, something fun happens, it tends to stick with you. You tell that story a few times, and the next thing you know, it's those great big fish stories that never go away. And they're real. I mean, they really happen. They seem like a dream. Somebody was just telling me the other day, if you would have told me I would be playing at the White House, I would have told you you're crazy. But there I was. I was in the White House playing for the president. And me, and that's kind of like what happens with everybody. You get lucky, you get talent at doing something, and the next thing you know, you're playing for the president. I love that kind of stuff.
Well, and if anyone out there was going to question, the validity of your stories, you've got so many great pictures in the book as well, so it's all backed up in there for sure.
Yeah, when I was writing the story and I had all these pictures that were definitely helping me recall a lot of events that happened because they're there, but I've been looking at them all this time. So it's not like they're old stories that I had to try to remember. But the thing that was fascinating while putting them together was I had a chance of doing the book that I always wanted to do, which was to have the pictures in the story to help tell the story rather than to have photo sections. That was the thing I got the biggest turn on it was, somebody telling me, oh, they don't do books like that. Well, this one's like that. I just always thought it was a real inconvenience in reading books when you have to be flipping back and forth to figure out what face goes with what name,
Sure.
And we solved that in this book.
Well, Danny, can you explain to the listeners a bit about, what it means to be a promoter and what goes into that?
Absolutely. You got to love music to begin with. I think if you go into being a concert promoter for simply trying to make money, you're going to fail at it because there's so many nuances about each and every different attraction that you have to be aware of in order to know how to promote them and where's your audience. That's number one. Let's assume you know a lot about music, you know a lot about the musicians, you've been following their careers, which is all very important. Just like a baseball player, you got to know where he's played before, how he's done from year to year, how he's doing right now. A lot of similarities between sports and music. So let's say you've got somebody you want to put on in your town as a promoter. You're going to have to make sure that they're open on the night that you want to do the show. You want to make sure that you have the right facility, the right venue where people are going to want to go to see that group. You're going to want to charge the right amount of money for tickets. You don't want to charge too much and turn people off, but you don't want to charge too little and give it away either. So you've got to come up with the right price of what to charge people, which is largely based on how much the band costs to perform each night and all the other costs. Whenever you go to a concert, you see an usher, you see a security guy, you see a girl taking your ticket at the front door, you see a guy selling you a T-shirt. All of these things go into the costs of putting on that concert. And when all is said and done, there has to be enough money in the till. In other words, you had to sell enough tickets at whatever price you're selling them at to pay for all the bills of putting on the show and paying the band, all the advertising, all the catering backstage. And when you're done paying everybody, whatever's left over is yours. A lot of times it doesn't come out to a whole lot of money. A lot of times it does come out to a whole lot of money. But the bottom line is, as a promoter, you're not looking at each and every show as a way to make money. You're looking at a way to prolong yourself as a promoter and be good at it by choosing the right buildings and the right groups to work with on the right day of the week. You know, all that stuff just keeps filtrating around and around like in a big circle, and the things never change. You know, the only thing that changes is the music and the audience and the band. Everything else, you pretty much, you know, you have to adhere to a very strict business sensibility, or else you don't last very long, like in any business.
Yeah, I'm sure the average person is thinking, you know, big stars, glamour, hot tubs, but you're covering a lot of stuff that's not so great behind the scenes in the book as well.
Well, you know, it is work, you know, but it's fun work. I mean, it's weird when you realize these things you're doing are in the name of, you know, John Mellencamp or Sting or the Grateful Dead or Paul McCartney. You're doing things to make their show happen, whatever that little thing is that you have to attend to, whether you're the guy who runs around and picks stuff up on the day of the show or the guy that pays the band and everybody in between. Without everybody, these shows don't happen, and we're out of luck. We're out of a job, you know. So we're definitely looking forward to having shows come back very soon. I mean, definitely this year, sooner than later. It won't be soon enough for me. But as we've come as far as we have in the last year, and I hope we've come a long way, I'm really looking forward to getting back to work, and so are all the bands.
Definitely. Again, Danny Zelisko's with us. We're talking about his new book, All Excess Occupation, Concert Promoter. And Danny, you've worked with so many different types of acts and people over the years. Is there a certain genre or type of music maybe where the shows seem to run more smoothly? And I guess on the flip side of that, are there some that maybe you know are going to be a stressful night?
Well, you know, after all these years, people have themselves together when it comes to touring. I mean, this is professional business. This is what these people do. I'll tell you the fun thing. Back in the 60s and the 70s, when bands were reportedly and famously out of their minds, throwing things through the hotel windows and showing up late and not showing up at all, most everybody's got that stuff out of their system, and they've got it behind them. I'm certain there's plenty of new groups that are going to start experiencing fame and stardom and money and all the rest that goes with it, and they'll lose their minds for a little while. But when they're done, they'll come back to earth, and they'll realize what a great business this is, and you know how important it is to stay in good shape and get sleep, because you're traveling. Traveling is very unnatural. One night after another, being in a different town every night, living out of a suitcase. I mean, it's far from glamorous, but the fact is, everything that everybody does every day of the week to get up and finally find their way to a stage at 8 o'clock at night to play for you and your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever. I mean, it's all worth it when those lights go out and they get up on stage and they go after it. That's why they're there. They're willing to leave their homes anywhere USA or anywhere in the world to come out and play music like they're ordained to do it, like it's a calling. It's not just about the money. The money don't hurt, believe me. But the bottom line is these people, these gifted people, share what they can with us on stage, and we become fans, and we have these lifelong friendships that we get to keep on having together because they keep coming to our town to play in concert. And I mean, it's magic when you think about it. There's no leagues, right? It's professional, but it's not a league. It's not a baseball game. It's not a golf tournament. These people just come out of nowhere with this great music and great talent. And if they weren't great, people would stop going to see them. And I know nowadays, more than ever, there's a thirst and a hunger for these people to come back and share their talent with us. I can't wait myself.
Well, how is it promoting today compared to, back in, I guess, maybe the 70s and 80s? I would consider to be maybe the golden age with the huge stadium shows. Is that the case still now, or is it much different?
Well, it depends. Certain bands in their careers get these times where they've got nowhere else to go but to a stadium to play. Those times don't seem to last forever in almost anybody's career. Like the Rolling Stones, for example. They go in and out of nightclubs, they play arenas, they play auditoriums, they play stadiums. They could probably play stadiums all the time, but they like to shake it up and play in different size places to feel it, instead of it's just always about the money. So in many cases, the things are exactly the same. You still have to sell so many tickets to make the show successful and be considered a successful touring act or promoter. The only difference today is, I guess, it takes a lot more money to break even, and a lot more tickets because they're more expensive. But basically the premise is still the same, except for the fact that in the 60s, 70s, in the heyday, everybody was really just learning technically how to put these shows together and make them work the way that they work today, which honestly is like clockwork most of the time. Most of these bands that are out there, you look at them, all the big names, the Radioheads and the Coldplays, the biggest groups of today, U2, these people have been around the world many times, and they can't maintain, that excellent credibility that they have without having a great staff that can put that show up and take it down and put it up again the next day in the next town. And these guys are just maniacs at this. They're consummate pros. They should have turned over all the vaccines to the rock bands, and they would have already had everybody done. Trust me on that. It's true. Nobody knows how to deliver the way the rock and roll live touring business works. Look at what these people do on a day in and day out basis. It's staggering. No sleep, and all these guys who are still around doing this, it isn't because of anything weird that they're doing to stay awake. These guys are lifers and professionals, and that's why we love going to these shows, because they're so good at putting them together.
Well, as you mentioned, you've worked with just about everyone you could think of in your career, but I think my favorite story in the book, and I'm a huge fan of his, I got to ask you about working with James Brown, because that seemed like that was not your average typical night for a promoter.
No, because when I first became aware of James, I was just a kid, mid-60s, and he came out with all that fantastic magical music he has, and I just loved him. But I was a Midwestern kid in Chicago, and my dad was from the South Side, and here's James Brown on TV, and it's like these people were there for eye openers in the 60s when all the bands came out, especially the R&B soul bands, the Berry Gordy years, and James Brown was like an entity all to himself. I loved being around when he was just coming up and becoming the huge star that he was. But then it was only, I want to say 1980 or 81, where I first met James, and Reverend Al Sharpton was his road manager. That was, and at the time, Al was a very stunning. He had a lot of presence, even as a tour manager for James Brown. But what a good guy! We got to be great friends. If I saw him today, he'd be like, we'd be all hugging. James was. You never knew what you were going to get with James. If James was in a good mood, there was nobody sweeter on earth. And if James was in a foul mood, and he was the boss. He had 12, 15 musicians on the road, and the rest of the people, pretty big entourage for those days. And if anything went wrong, he knew about it, and he cracked the whip. He was a taskmaster, especially on stage. Music-wise, there was no compromise with James Brown. In his personal life, and it's like I say, and this is not meant to be a put down in any way, but when people get super extra special talent, I think sometimes they lose a lot of common sense. And this happened with James from time to time, which is well documented. and which is sad because he was nearly the perfect human being. I mean, there's nobody ever, better on stage, as far as the front guy goes, and the music he wrote and put together at the time when he did it was fascinating. You would have loved him. You would have absolutely loved him. I look forward to seeing him all the time because it was like that weird feeling of like getting on a roller coaster. You didn't know if you were going to make it or if you were just going to be scared and laugh the whole time.
I know the book is just out, but is there anything else maybe in the works for you or something else the listeners should watch out for?
Well, I've been gathering memorabilia for a long time, so I made a deal with this company called InvaluableAuctions.com, and on April 3rd, I'm going to have a sale of some of my memorabilia, and over the next couple of years, I'm just going to, little by little, get rid of most everything because I think the world needs to enjoy this stuff that I've been lucky enough to collect all these years. So I'm gonna sell it off and share it, and I want to get some music scholarships going for some kids that need some money. And that would be one fun way to give back. I really wanted to share the stories from the book and all these things that happened, and I'm glad I got that out. But in the meantime, I want to give people the concerts that they bought tickets to last year, and all they've been doing all this time, like it's really for hell for everybody, is we're playing hopscotch on a calendar going from March to June to September to December to February. Well, hopefully, we're done doing that. I really hope so. But people, should know that other people like yourselves have been extremely patient and held on to the tickets and are just waiting for the show. I mean, at this point, it's like a badge of honor to have held on to a ticket and be a fan for somebody and going, I'm going to that show. And it's kind of like a very positive feeling of accomplishment once we get there and we see, our bands. It'll mean our lives are back. And I can't wait for that day.
Definitely. Well, Danny, again, the new book is great, and I really appreciate you speaking with me today. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and for anybody who's interested in checking it out, it's dzplive.com, and it's got information on our concerts and everything else we talked about is all in there. Some great reviews on the book. I love what people are writing about it. So that in itself has made it a great success so far. So we're just going to keep spreading the word and hope everybody digs it.
And again, that was concert promoter Danny Zelisko, and his new book, All Excess Occupation, Concert Promoter, is out now.